Among all the other living beings on the planet, humans have been the only one who were able to think abstractly, construct a complex language, and directly change the climate. No other animal on Earth are able to do those things. Yes, chimpanzees use tools. Your cute pet can understand commands you train them to do. And octopuses have shown that they can actually solve puzzles and mazes. But none so far have the complexity of intelligence, awareness, and emotions that our kind, the Homo Sapiens, have. However, as it turns out, this hasn't always been the case, because a few 100,000 years ago, with some as recent as only as 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens have walked alongside other humans belonging to the Homo genus. These species are alike us in some ways, such as having a common ancestor before the split of our homina subtribe to that of the chimpanzees, but they are also vastly different from us. Since then, various species have evolved under this subtribe, and from the Australopithecus down to Homo, the human natural group have formed. The Homo habilis, widely believed as the first human species to have ever evolved, has the capacity to use tools. Homo erectus, the first human species ever to walk upright. And the Homo neanderthalensis, a cousin species of ours, who may have been smarter than we first believed them to be. While their lives are certainly a curiosity, there are other human species that have mystified scientists even more. These 5 mysterious archaic human relatives are so enigmatic that even their existence is a mystery in itself. Who are these people? What has happened to them? And is there any possibility for these species to have actually survived after their supposed extinction? Let's find out. The Hobbits. In the epic trilogy Lord of the Rings, the land of Middle-earth is populated by a wide range of species and humanoid races that coexist with humans. One such race are the Hobbits, small, quick-footed human-like species, standing 2 to 4 feet tall. While the Hobbits are certainly a creation of J.R.R. Tolkien's great mind and doesn't actually exist in reality, there's a human ancestor that reminded the discoveries of the famous fictional race. Homo Florensiensis was an ancient and extinct human species discovered in the islands of Flores, Indonesia. Fossil remains are dated around 60,000 to 100,000 years ago, meaning they sure have lived alongside the ancestors of modern humans, Homo sapiens, and our closest cousins, the Neanderthals and Denisovans. Standing at around 3.5 feet tall, the Homo Florensiensis, or the Hobbit, is the smallest human species ever found. Since its unexpected discovery, scientists have been mystified by how different it is in contrast to other human species. Obviously, everyone is curious as to why they are very small. Scientists have postulated many theories, varying from the sensible and logical to the outright outlandish. One interesting theory, though, is that the Hobbits' diminutive size was due to the phenomenon of island dwarfism. Island dwarfism, or insular dwarfism, is a strange but very real evolutionary process in which animals become smaller and smaller as a result of long-term isolation in environments with little resources and absence of predators. In fact, one of the smallest stegodon elephant species was found in the same island of Flores, and it stands only at 4 feet tall. However, some scientists contend that the hobbits were already small to begin with, long before they arrived at Flores Island. Whether this is true or not still remains to be seen. In 2007, in a cave nearly 2,000 miles away from Flores Island, another diminutive species of humans was discovered. Found in Callao Cave, Luzon, Philippines, this Homo species was known afterwards as Homo Luzonensis, similar to Homo Florensiensis. The Luzonensis only stands around 3 feet tall and may have also been subjected to insular dwarfism, hence their small structure. But because there were only a handful of species found for both of these species, we know so little about these hobbit-like people. We don't even know for sure why they vanished, despite living in a relatively secluded location away from other species and large predators. If you still want to learn more about the hobbits of Flores Island, you can watch our detailed video about them. You will find a link in the description of this video. Homo Longi, or the Dragon Man. From the tiny hobbits, we move on to a recently identified human species that has been nicknamed the Dragon Man. Quite a grand nickname for an archaic human, right? Now you might be thinking, well, what kind of human is it that warranted the name Dragon Man? Does it have scales, fangs, or wings? Or does it cook its meals by breathing fire instead of banging 2 pieces of flint? Well, sorry to disappoint, but the origin of its name is far simpler than that. Homo Longi got its name from Longjiang, which literally means Dragon River, a name often used to refer to Heilongjiang province in China. The remains of what was to be called the Homo Longi was discovered in Harbin, along Songhua River in Heilongjiang. But perhaps what's most interesting than its name is the story of its discovery. In 1943, during the Japanese occupation of Manchukuo in China, a local railroad worker found a rather out-of-place looking skull in the work area. Just a few years before that, the Peking man stole the attention of the world as one of the most important Homo fossils ever found. Knowing its value, the worker decided to hide it in a well. Even after the Japanese were driven out of their country, which was then soon followed by the invading Soviets and the rise of the CCP, the worker chose not to tell anyone about it in fear that would implicate him as being once connected to the Japanese imperialist when he found it. For more than 70 years, the worker never divulged to anyone about the existence of the skull. Until in 2018, he told his grandchildren on his deathbed about his long-held secret. There, under the abandoned well where he stashed it away 7 decades ago, was the skull of an ancient human species that could potentially change what we know about the origin of humans. Among all the human species, the skull of Homo Longi is perhaps the longest ever found so far. With the massive brow ridges, large eye sockets, and relatively bigger molars than Homo Sapiens, Homo Longi may have belonged to a more primitive group. There have also been suggestions that Homo Longi may have actually been a Denisovan, but so far, no concrete evidence proving this has been found yet. So, for now, Homo Longi is its own species, especially that it has a rather distinctive features, such as their brain size comparative to that of the modern humans and Neanderthals. Some scientists even speculated that the Homo Longi may even be a closer relative to modern humans than Neanderthals, whom we share some DNA with. If you like what we do, you can support us by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Ghost Human Ancestor. If finding an archaic human species with fossils to back up its existence long time ago is already a puzzle in itself, what about a human species we are quite sure that have existed, but we don't have any bones to prove it? Well, this is the case for a hypothetical Homo species that lived in Africa, dubbed as the Ghost Human Ancestor. You might be wondering, how did scientists postulate the existence of such a species when there was no fossil to suggest it to begin with? A study published in 2019 has proposed the existence of a hypothetical human ancestor species. According to this study, The ancestors of what is now residents of West Africa may have actually interbred with another ancient human species. A test on West African genetic ancestry was conducted and found that between 2% to 19% of their DNA was derived from this particular ghost human species. The problem is, it doesn't connect with any of the non-known archaic human species, but rather to an ancient population that existed even before our split with the Neanderthals. To make matters even more mysterious, there is no fossil evidence yet that directly links this to this group. Who these people were, what they were like, and how they evolved, and more importantly, what happened to them, we have no clue. What we know, however, is that they contributed to the gene pool of a considerable number of West Africans, and it was thanks to the biological legacy that we are aware they once walked on the earth. It's very interesting to see that nowadays, we can infer a whole new species without fossil evidence through the power of DNA. It only suggests that the more technological advancements and discovery we make, the more we can fill up the puzzle that is the ancestry of humanity. Denisovans. In 2008, a group of Russian scientists scouted and investigated a cave in Siberia and found a lone finger bone, of which was believed to have been a young girl. Not knowing what to make of it, researchers tried to trace its roots to any known ancient human species. However, none fit the bill in particular. It wasn't until 2 years later that the bone was confirmed to belong to that of a new and previously unknown archaic hominin that is vastly different from modern humans and Neanderthals. It later earned the name Denisovan after the cave it was first found. If there's an ancient human species that is the very definition of outright mysterious, none comes close with the Denisovans on winning that title. The Denisovans is either an extinct species or subspecies of humans that may have lived around 40,000 to more than 217,000 years ago. Even their categorization as a species or subspecies is still hotly debated up to now. Because there are only a handful of available fossil evidence found, we know so little about this mysterious archaic humans. What we know is that Neanderthals and Denisovans shared a common ancestor until around 380,000 to 470,000 years ago. As you might know, our own species have also split with them earlier, occurring between 550,000 to 760,000 years ago, making the Denisovans our very distant yet still very human cousins. But even if they are genetically distant from us, that doesn't mean to say we hadn't crossed paths back then. Not only did we compete resources with our Denisovan cousins, but, like the Neanderthals, we may have intermingled with them at some point. In fact, a considerable number of people from East and Southeast Asia have a Denisovan ancestry. Red deer cave people. From the very archaic humans that lived hundreds of thousands of years ago, let's speed up our time machine and visit a more recent human ancestor that have puzzled scientists since their discovery. And while the others on this list have cool or formal sounding names, this one's naming choice may underwhelm you a little bit. Let's meet the Red Deer Cave people. Found in the Red Deer Cave in China in 1979, the remains of what was to be called the Red Deer Cave people may have lived from 11,500 years ago to 17,830 years ago. They were believed to have flat faces, jutting jaws without chins, and prominent brows, features often attributed to more ancient hominins. But compared to other archaic humans, they live very recently, and thus begs the question, if most ancient human species were already gone around 40,000 years ago, who were these people? Considering they lived only a few thousand years before the dawn of the ancient civilizations, why do they look very different from modern humans? For more than 4 decades, this discrepancy puzzled researchers and scientists. Were they a different archaic hominin group who somehow managed to survive what killed off our other cousins? However, the answer may have been simpler than what was previously thought. It was neither a hybrid or archaic. Red deer cave people were in fact modern humans, thanks to a recent DNA sequencing. They simply have a bit more distinctive features than the rest. But even if their identity has been solved, the fact that they are an extinct branch in the family of modern humans suggests they may hold answers to some long-standing questions about our prehistoric ancestors. What happened to other human species? Once upon a time, there lived around 10 human species, or maybe even more. Now there's only one. How did that occur, and what happened to the rest of us? No one knows for sure. It could be either a drastic change in the climate, a major catastrophe like a volcanic eruption, or even an asteroid impact. Maybe there was a shortage of resources, or there was a Black Death-like plague that wiped them out. However, those scenarios are the most optimistic possibilities of why we're the only ones left. There's one darker theory that explains that we may have, after all, caused their extinction. Because when you think about it, these ancient humans that have existed for hundreds of thousands of years have only started vanishing one by one when we arrived. Is it possible then that when nature hosted a Hunger Games for early humans, we slowly killed everyone off and emerged victorious? But how did that happen? There's no question that Homo sapiens are way smarter than our ancient human cousins. We are able to use far more complicated tools and create complex language. More importantly, we are good at cooperation and strategizing, which the others may have lacked. At the same time, however, we are a uniquely violent and warlike species. Intrinsically competitive, territorial, and brutal, we remove anyone and everyone in our way for domination, even if that means disseminating a whole population. Our history shows how violent and dangerous we can be. From the Roman conquest, to its downfall by outside forces, to the Holocaust of the mid-20th century, we are capable of instigating a mass extinction, if left to our own devices. It is really far-fetched to say that our earlier ancestors, seeing that their less smarter cousins competed with them on the same land and resources, also resorted to the same tactic. But are they really completely gone? Turns out, not really. Denisovans and Neanderthals, for instance, left their mark on our gene pool. Somehow they have survived, only that they lived within us. As a cliche as that sounds, in this case, it's actually very true. However, if these ancient human species actually survived until now, how do you think they would live alongside us? What would they be like? Would we be able to coexist with them peacefully? Comment below and let's see what you come up with. Thanks for watching.